Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Case IH recently launched new models in their Optum series. And for a farmer making the decision between a Steiger, a Magnum, and an Optum, there's a lot to consider. David Giroux is the high horsepower tractor specialist at Case IH, and he joins us now. David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a cash crop product specialist for Case IH. So what does that mean, right? So I basically cover all of Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and I go out to dealers, I go out to customers, and I work alongside them to figure out, what is the best tractor for them. And then once they do make a purchase, I go out there and try to optimize their performance in the field.
Optimizing performance. That's the name of the game for any grower in 2026. For folks trying to make a decision between an Optum series, a Magnum series, or a Steiger series, what's your advice? How do we break that down?
Sure. It's a great time to talk about tractors at Case IH, right? So we have the largest tractor lineup we've ever had, from a 25 horsepower farm all the way up to a 785. But if we just look at the three top series, we have the Steiger, we have the Magnum, and we have the Optum, right? So how do we break them apart? So if we look at the Steiger, that's going to be our heavy tillage tractor, large air seeder, large planter, right? If we need to pull a large field cultivator, an 875 ripper in the fall, that's going to be the Steiger tractor. We have a track offering with the quad track. We also sell wheeled Steigers as well.
Okay, so that's Steiger, heavy duty, heavy pulling.
Absolutely.
What would you do for in-season work?
So in-season work as well as pulling a planter, we're looking at the Magnum. I mean, we're known for that. Case IH Magnum, been around for a long time, right? That's going to be the standard in row crop farming. So if I'm pulling a large high-speed planter, something like that, in-season side dressing, cultivating, anything like that, the Magnum is going to be the go-to for row crop work.
Okay. Optum's the new kid on the block. Who should be looking into that?
Yeah, so really we brought the Optum to market to be our multi-purpose tractor. So we launched three new large models, the 440, the 390, and the 360. And really this can fit a lot of different things on a farmer's operation. So whether they want to be hauling manure, hauling silage, the tractor's going to fit perfectly for them. It's a great triple mower tractor because of a little bit shorter wheelbase, integrated front 3-point hitch and PTO. It's going to be awesome for that. And for, like my dairy farmers in Wisconsin, it's really multi-purpose. If they want to do hauling and cutting with it, they could. It can also go on a planter. It can also be a tillage tractor. All
right. Let's talk comfort between the three series. Is there any notable difference from the operator's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're always focused on operator comfort. We have an automotive-grade interior in all of our tractors, right? So you get in there, you feel at home when you're doing them long 16-hour days, right? But if we break it apart and look at the Steiger series, we really just launched an HDS track undercarriage system. It's called heavy duty suspended, okay? So basically every bogie wheel, every idler wheel in that case track suspension moves up and down over bumps as you go through the field. Okay, less vibration in the cab, right? For the Magnum, we have active cab suspension. So basically, as I go over bumps, the front axle is telling the cab suspension, how do I change as I go through the field? Provides a better ride, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, with the Optum that we just launched, and this is new for us at Case IH, is independent front suspension, okay? So as I go over bumps, think of that hauling situation going down the road, that front suspension is going to oscillate basically and go over and eat the bumps up.
That is pretty incredible. They're comfortable, they're functional on farms, of course, packed with technology options. If we've got viewers who want to learn more, where would you send them for more information?
For any more information, you always can go down to your Case IH dealer, talk to your local expert, or go to caseih.com.
David Giroux, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the distinctions between the Optum, Magnum, and Steiger series.
Absolutely, thank you.
Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hotsy pressure washer. Visit Hotsy.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hotsy. Well, another week in the commodity markets that we saw the headlines really shaping price levels. Joining us now to break things down in detail is Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
We continue to watch these traders, obviously watching the Iran conflict very closely. Mike, we watch grains trade in conjunction with crude oil prices. Is that something that's going to stay with us as you look forward?
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I mean, that's where the WTI crude oil and the hard red wheat futures have both gone down to their May lows as we get into the end of this past week. And I think they're still pretty much attached to the hip. Why would that be? And it's really about the supply demand fundamentals and also the idea that is supply falling faster than demand or not. And I think by the trade moving back to those May lows, they've made, at least the investment trade has made a decision that the supply demand fundamentals are more in equilibrium. I'm going on record with clients saying the jury is still out in both, especially as we get ready for North American harvest of the wheat, and especially given that we really have not seen that Strait of Hormuz open. We're still down about 15 million barrels a day when it comes to that Strait of Hormuz.
Mike, you said something interesting there, which was how the investment money is interpreting these market moves. We do have a new chair at the Federal Reserve. We've got Treasury rates climbing. How do you think all of this mixes with interest rate policy as we get deeper into summer this year?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because I think this is going to be as important as the summertime weather when it comes to how high can we go potentially in the grain markets and for how long. In other words, it will be a very sharp rally and then fall off or not. What we saw in the middle part of May, right around the same time we made the big highs, was that the crude oil market went from being a leader and driver to the upside in the grains to more of a negative feature. And that was because the investment funds associated higher crude oil prices with the idea that the Fed's going to have to get ahead of inflation, raise rates, and the risky asset people, I think, essentially said, let's take money off the table here. So I think they're maybe on the sidelines more just because of the interest rate questions. The CME futures is suggesting a Fed rate hike in December already, whereas before this big run up in the gasoline and the diesel market this early spring, early summer time period, we had already priced in 2, maybe even 3 rate cuts. So we've completely flipped the script when it comes to the rate situation.
So with that potential investment money risk hanging out over the market's head, Mike, we're watching this corn crop come out of the ground a little ahead of the 5-year average. What's your advice to growers for marketing their new crop corn?
Yeah, I still feel like that the fertilizer, diesel, energy situation is going to carry some weight downstream through lower yields and lower production worldwide, not just here in the States. So I would say my mindset's still peeled, keeping my eyes peeled on the wheat and on the crude oil, Mike, at this point. So we've done some cleaning up on old crop corn, but still very light on new crop hedges.
All right. Are there any price targets you're watching, or is this just a fluid situation, Mike, for traders to manage kind of day to day?
Yeah, both. But I do have an idea of if we can get back towards the highs in the July wheat, hard red and soft red, as we progress through an early harvest that probably is going to be more disappointing than the trade thinks, with Northern Hemisphere, Europe, Black Sea weather also maybe a little bit too dry. 620 area, 650 area, support levels holding, bounces us back. That maybe gives us a 520 D's corn price to go after.
All right. We'll have more with Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics after this. Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hotsy pressure washer. Visit Hotsy.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hotsy. We're talking commodity markets this week with Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. And Mike, as we look out at this year's new crop prospects, soybeans way in the ground early. What are you watching here in this market as we get deeper into summer?
Yeah, the thing for me, Mike, is for clients, when I talk to them about the corn market, I essentially say, I'm not worried about corn unless the beans give up. And the reason I say that is because we still really haven't addressed what our export demand is on the soybean complex, knowing that we've got a healthy South American crop. In other words, we really don't know the relationship of the U.S.-Chinese ag exports at this point.
So we're just going to be kind of waiting and watching. Is that where you're at as we head into June?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think the weekly export sales, the month of June, are going to be extraordinarily important, more so than normal. And then we have to look forward to the acreage assessment at the end of the month that USDA is refiguring. These two things concern me, so I'd like to see some exports underneath our belts as we get to the end of the month of June.
Now, Mike, in our first segment, we talked about maybe the breakdown in relationship between crude oil and grains as crudes moved higher, grains have followed. We've been watching sort of an inverse on the livestock side. If we see this crude oil market start to break, could that pump us to the next level in live cattle or feeder cattle?
I think it could, but I think we're going to have to watch the grain markets. I think that the feeder corn relationship, that opposite relationship with one another, is still very much alive and kicking. So when the corn would go higher in potentially the summer on the weather or another move up in the crude oil, will that break the feeders back down and the investment flows? I think that's possible. I think the other thing too to look at, Mike, is we're still not addressing the situation of 2% more cattle on feed as of this past week or this month's cattle on feed report, and yet year-to-date slaughter is down over 9%. Something's going to have to give because we're not bringing in Mexican feeders. So you can say beef on dairy is responsible for some of it, but I don't see it responsible for all of it, and the slaughter is just not making up.
Mike, how do we explain that additional 2%? Are these just grass calves coming in really early off of drought grass in the Central Plains?
Yeah, you said it. We may have gone and flipped from retention to liquidation again. We had Colorado up 17%, Kansas up 5%, and Texas up 8% on the placements on this monthly report that we just received a week or so ago. That spoke to me, and clients and ranchers would suggest the same thing. They let go of some of their feeders, some of their yearlings that they possibly were going to retain.
How are you advising your feedlot operators to manage this risk as we look ahead to this long fall with fat still at 240, 250?
Yeah, be long grain at this point, be long the commodity that is the most upside if the crude oil goes back higher and diesel prices stay higher, and be very current if you're at 260 plus in your fat cattle.
Great advice, as always, from Mike Zuzolo of Global Commodity Analytics. Mike, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, Mike, we always end or almost always end about the US dollar. That's really the linchpin when it comes to the bond market. If the crude oil goes up and the dollar goes down, that could soften some of the interest rate play for the investors.
Okay, things to watch. Crude oil, dollar value, what's happening in the bond markets. Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics, thanks for bringing us that global perspective.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, I understand it was active last week in the Pacific Northwest. Is that trend set to continue?
Yeah, an unusually strong weather system for the time of year. Typically, you get those troughs, if you will, and the strength of magnitude basically back into the portions of the middle and late wintertime season, and the rainy season, the stormy season, if you will, winds down at the beginning part of April. But it is what it is, and it was about an inch or two of rain in the gauges, snow in the higher peaks of the Sierra and the Cascades as well, and a couple of showers and thunderstorms that were heavy and severe. So it's basically a rinse and repeat set up the last significant wave moving into the Pacific Northwest, and then we'll kind of flatten the jet stream out, build it back up again. This would be the western flank, by the way, of the talk of this Omega block that's setting up over the middle part of the country. So heads up on severe weather into parts of the northern and parts of the central high plains as well. This system will blow northeastward into southern Canada, and yeah, we have broken the back of that 95 to 100 degree heat. Boy, soil moisture levels have been declining rapidly in this part of the spring grain belt. Quite high pressure middle part of the sections of Idaho along the Divide and the Bitterroot chain. Couple of showers back in late in the week across coastal sections of the Pacific Northwest. On the southern end of this trough here, ridge farther downstream, and then trough across the eastern part of the country. A couple of systems winding their way through the western plains, a couple of thunderstorms. The rain was appreciated, too late to matter on the wetter wheat fields, but the pasture lands are of significance, of course, and pretty quiet weather. Seasonal temperatures, warmth across the valleys of California, the usual June swoon, coastal low clouds and fog and drizzle down around the San Diego area. But in any event, a couple of thunderstorms across the central plains as they diminish as the late week wears on. High pressure across the Four Corners, quiet weather into the valleys of California.
My travels this past week in northern Illinois, I saw a center pivot irrigator running. Greg, dryness is a risk. Do you see any rain in the forecast?
Yeah, abnormally dry in the past couple of drought monitors, probably worsening as we speak, although we did get 10th to quarter local 1-inch rains south of Champaign. There were 1 to 3, some spots 3 to 5 inches of rain. I-70, Indianapolis, Columbus, southward into northern Kentucky. So too wet here, back into the Ozarks and northward into the Missouri Valley, and then drying out quickly into the upper Midwest as the storms get going as the week wears on in the northern and western Corn Belt. Snow on the peaks of the northern and central Rockies. Severe weather rocks the plains. Nebraska 82% short and very short in topsoil moisture. And that story builds across the Midwest. Get ready for words like flash drought showing up across the Midwest and points north and westward as we move on through the next several weeks. Going to be tough to find any organized rain in that particular part of the Corn Belt. High humidity, a couple of thunderstorms, and they're just scattered across the southern plains. Pretty typical weather down through the Delta. Nice to see some recent rains across Cotton Belt country and off to the east as well. Too late to matter, I suspect, in some fields, but cotton may be appreciated. Of course, pasture lands and rangelands as well. A little change as the week wears on. Scattered showers and thunderstorms Delta down through Texas. Quiet high pressure across areas of the central Corn Belt, and a couple of thunderstorms in the desert southwest.
What are you watching as you look to the East Coast?
Some rain early in the week. Again, here is the downstream trough. The ridge right here, you go farther west of the Missouri, you're back into a trough. It's the Greek omega letter. You get under the middle part of that letter. Won't rain for weeks, I think, and that's going to be the story over the Midwest. A couple of showers and thunderstorms here early in the week over the eastern part of the country. The pattern shift is underway with warmth now in the western Corn Belt, giving way to a couple of showers and thunderstorms north and west of the Twins, but high pressure, sinking air, low afternoon humidity, warm temperatures worse than if it were a 30-mile-an-hour wind, 90 degrees, and higher humidity and dew points. So this will be a rapidly worsening situation and teleconnecting north and westward in these drought areas out of northern Illinois with time. The rains were welcome, and they were heavy and severe and will continue to be so here early to middle parts of the week on the southern branch of the jet stream here. It's an El Nino setup and a rapidly evolving one. Showers and thunderstorms in through the Cotton Belt areas of Georgia, northern Florida, back on westward. Warm conditions out of the southern plains with a couple of showers and thunderstorms there. Little change as the rains, though, do shift southward into Florida, out through the Outer Banks as well. High pressure across the mid-Atlantic region anticipated with a slightly warm but less humid environs, a far more comfortable outdoor work scenario for parts of the Delta. We will have that 4-week forecast and take a look at when the next organized rains get going across the Corn Belt coming up.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Well, folks, the 2026 growing season is moving right along, and as of earlier this May, USDA has provided us with some data, some expectations for the 2026 season. Well, that has allowed grains analysts to do their thing, do some deep dives, and the folks over at Terrain have dug in to the price outlooks for both corn and soybeans as we get deeper into this season. There's a report coming out on June 1st at Terrain called Tight Stocks, Wide Margins. Joining me now to break it down is Mark Rosenbaum, Senior Grains and Oilseeds Analyst with Terrain. And Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be back.
Let's start with the basics, Mark. You guys are putting together these outlooks, and what do you use for your base facts to sort of set a baseline for these deep dives?
Yeah, for this report, we started from the May WASDE report and really wanted to look at the question of, say, what if area comes in a little bit different than where we start from March planting intentions the USDA started from in the May WASDE, and what if yields come in a little bit different too? What could that mean for season average farm prices?
Okay, so on these price outlooks, we're not changing anything with demand. We're going to assume the USDA's got that pretty well figured out, but you're going to experiment with different levels of production, correct?
Yeah, for this report, we wanted to take it kind of two pieces at a time. We wanted to focus only on the supply side at the moment and hold demand constant. We may do something in the future related to demand, but for now, we wanted to look at only the supply side and what some uncertainty there could mean for farm prices.
Well, let's dig into it, Mark. We've got a lot of uncertainty now here in the corn market. We've got input costs elevated. We've had a little bit of volatility heading into this spring. What does your analysis show for profitability expectations as we get through this season?
Yeah, according to our model and historical statistical relationships that we use to rely on to build those models on the corn side, we're coming in just a little bit higher than USDA. I think they had a $4.40 per bushel season average price. We're at about $4.46, just close for this early in the year. But I would note that we're just a little bit higher than they are. But for the reasons you mentioned, fertilizer prices, obviously we have uncertain summer weather ahead and other things like that. Things could change. The supply side could look a little bit different come June or even later in the year. And so we look at a range of prices. If we get a little bit higher area, even say we were off just a little bit on the March survey, and even a bit lower yields, we could see prices pushing into the $5 range. And even in a case where we see a bit more area and even just a little bit lower yields, we could still see corn prices in the mid $4 range. So I think there's a bit of optimism there.
And you're really looking at the end of the season stocks to use number, right, Mark? Is that sort of what determines whether or not we're seeing prices go up or down?
It's a pretty good indicator, and the expectation for what that stock position and that relative stock position, stocks to use ratio, is at the end of the year is a pretty good indicator of that price, because it's all derived from future expectations.
All right, so on the corn side, if we do see that production come down, we expect to see prices start to move. Is there, for folks watching those stocks to use numbers, is there a particular percentage point that really sparks traders' excitement?
Yeah, there's a couple points here, and I would direct folks to one of the graphics in the report. So for the first estimates of the 26-27 marketing year in the May WASDE report, USDA forecast the ending stocks to use ratio to tighten a bit, down to closer to 12%. And this 10 to 12% range is kind of where what I would characterize as a transition period between a lower price environment and a higher price environment. And, we're sitting right on the edge of that. So if we see a bit lower supplies from any cause, we could see the opportunity for higher prices, and this 10 to 12% range is kind of this transition period where we start to see prices rise at an increasing rate. And then once we drop below 10%, we start to see, historically at least, much higher prices and much higher price volatility. There's a wider range of outcomes below 10%.
All right, so on the corn side, we could see that supply bring down. We could be tightening that. It could make it interesting. On the soy side, is it that same 10 to 12% stocks to use ratio number that matters for soy, or is it different?
The relationship, at least for our model on the soybean side, is a bit wider than it is for soybeans. And I don't have exactly a hard and fast percentage there on that side. The relationship's a bit weaker, and so I wouldn't want to say that there's a certain range or definitive range where we see prices start to move much higher.
Okay, what do you anticipate for stocks to use in general on the soy side as we get through this season?
Yeah, so USDA came in at 310 million bushels, so a bit of tightening from this year. According to our models, which again, there's a wide range of price outcomes for any given stock level, we're at about 1076 for that ending stock position. But I would note that even within our range of uncertainty, it includes USDA's $11.40 range. So both of them are in the range of possibilities given the stock position. But for some fundamental reasons, we know we have strong crush demand. So if we see that pick up, we could see stocks tighten a bit. And then we also have some uncertainty kind of always sitting out there on the trade side as well. So if we see that go the other direction, we can see stocks come in a bit higher than we would expect, and prices react accordingly.
Could get interesting. Folks, check out that report, terrainag.com, out June 1st. Mark Rosenbaum, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer, celebrating a century of innovation.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's summer across the growing season, and crops aren't the only thing growing out in the field. Farmers are growing in their knowledge and their networking skills by getting out and getting to events. One of the big ones coming this summer is the Ag PhD Field Day, July 30th. Joining me now to talk about it is Darren Hefty. Darren, thanks for joining us.
Oh, so happy to be here. And I'm really excited to talk about Field Day. It's just right around the corner in July. I know July seems like a ways off, but all the things are going in place right now. We've got all the crops in the ground. I guess we got a couple late ones. We're going to have some really small crop just to show some things as well. But pretty much everything's set and just excited for a great year.
That's exciting. Now, Darren, one of the great things, of course, getting up to the field day, seeing the research plots, what's new out there. Anything exciting growing this year in those plots?
Yeah, there really is. There's two big new soybean traits that are going to completely take over in North America here over the next couple of years. And we've got both of them at our Ag PhD Field Days. So we're going to be showing off new Viconic soybeans. Certainly, Nemosphere is one that isn't getting as much talk right now, but that one's coming along really nicely and has shown really well the last couple of years in the research trials. So we're excited to talk just about, hey, where are we going with soybeans across our country?
Boy, this industry does keep changing. And now one of the cool things about the field day, it is a free event still, isn't it, Darren? I don't want to be telling tales out of school, but this is free for the whole family.
It is, and that's the fun thing. You know, a lot of farm shows, it's like, well, here's how it works in my house. I guess you can go to that, Dad. Well, no, this isn't just for me or for the active farmer in the house. This is for everybody. There's activities for kids. There's plenty of great speakers. So there's going to be lots of different topics covered at the Ag PhD Field Day. It's not all just about crop production. And, you know, there's lots of cool things like brand new equipment here too. And I know last year there was a little kid that I was talking to, and he's probably 8 or 9 years old. And I said, "How do you like Field Day?" He goes, "It's the greatest day ever. I actually got to climb in all this equipment. I can't believe it." So he was pretty fired up, and there's just tons of stuff to do.
Now, Darren, you are connected deeply with so many folks throughout the agricultural industry. You mentioned new equipment going to be on hand. Anything exciting that you're looking forward to taking a peek at?
Well, you know, the last couple of years, I would say drones have been a really big deal. And my nephew convinced Brian and me, hey, we need a drone in our operation. So we've been using a drone the last couple of years now, doing some of the spraying on our farm. And wow, have those things come a long ways. And then you look at just all the electronics that go into the equipment now with, starting with auto steer and moving on. There's so many things that can be done. That's one of the things that a lot of guys want to see. Okay, what are the new things? How complicated are some of these things going to be? And how could they help me make more money? Because it's all about efficiency. And with farming today, if we can be more efficient, that means more dollars in our pocket and hopefully better crops too.
That's what it's all about. Of course, let's leave us with the details. Darren, July 30th, Ag PhD Field Day in Baltic, South Dakota. Where is Baltic? You're what, half hour north of Sioux Falls?
Yeah, well, we're about 10 minutes north of Sioux Falls. So yeah, it's right on our own farm. And so it's that's one of the cool things is you get to come to our farm in the middle of the growing season and see how all these things are working in the field. So we look forward to seeing you there. Just go to agphd.com to pre-register.
Fantastic. Darren Hefty, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Well, Greg, it sounds like precipitation might be hard to find for some farmers as we get farther. What does next week look like?
Especially into the eastern Corn Belt areas. We'll start in relatively good shape over the western sections from an outdoor work standpoint. Then this area in the Pacific Northwest, kind of a late season event, will begin to work on eastbound. So while we have little or none to start, the showers and thunderstorms will pick up along and west of the Red River and Missouri River as the week wears on. Early in the week, some organized rain and maybe out towards Mount Washington, higher peaks of Vermont, New Hampshire, a little snow. The severe weather potential over the southeastern part of the country. Good chunk of the Midwest corn and bean complex, high and dry. Southern areas of the belt too wet. Everybody else getting dry and drier here in the days and weeks to come.
How do temperatures look as you look out to the week of June 8th?
Again, another trip off of this sort of inverted weather pattern where cloud cover keeps temperatures below average down through Texas, the Rio Grande, the Gulf Coast in through Florida. The warmth to the north and some of the hottest weather we've seen this summertime season likely to reestablish itself here towards mid-June into the northern plains, upper Midwest, warmth all the way across the St. Lawrence River Valley. From a moisture standpoint, not much to speak of here. Below average across a wide area of the Corn Belt, northeast of New England, a little more normalized in the Pacific Northwest. Wetter than average, would you believe, desert Southwest, Oklahoma, Texas, in the southeastern part of the country. Any other El Nino there, Mike, in summertime, a weak one wouldn't be any big impact on weather. Get a stronger one going, a different story.
For the week of June 15th, Greg, does that hot bubble still stay in place over the northern Corn Belt?
Yeah, as we get into the start of astronomical summertime, here it is, firmly established, and now we're into June, and this is 95 to 100-degree heat and then some. In baked out grounds already in some areas, although we'll have some rainfall to speak of here summertime the 21st, 3:23 in the morning. Central time below average temps in the cloud cover, and the wetter weather pattern that continues to be focused onto the southern plains, Cotton Belt country, Georgia and through Florida. Welcome news here with dryness and drought, worsening and expanding, probably, again, flash drought conditions for the middle part of the country.
Any major pattern shifts by the time we get to the week of June 22nd?
This is the last semblance, I think, of an organized rain. We'll get to it in a second here, but the warmth kind of gets suppressed southward for a time. Temperatures recovering across the southeastern part of the country. A little sliver of cooler air. This will have to be watched later in the summertime season, mind you, with growing degree days in mind. Maybe our next round of organized shower with thunderstorm activity, northern and eastern Corn Belt. Short-term drying in the southern plains and southwest.
The editors on the Farm Progress team live all over the country, and that gives them special insights into the crops grown in their geography. Whitney Shannon, a staff writer with Farm Press, is an Arkansas native, and she knows the rice industry. Whitney, thanks for joining us this week.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me on.
The rice industry, how does 2026 look for those growers in Arkansas?
It's bad. I guess bad's the best word you can give for it right now. Typically, we grow about 1.4 million acres of rice in our state, and this year we're looking at 750,000 to 850,000 acres, a significant cut in our regular rice planted acreage.
Whitney, when we start to see acreage shifts like that, half of rice production acreage leave Arkansas, what does that do for some of the expensive infrastructure, like a mill, for example?
Well, I mean, they need those rice acres coming in, right, to keep that infrastructure going. So you're looking at major rice mills being very concerned about whether or not they can sustain in this economy. So it branches far beyond I say just farmers. But it's not just farmers. It goes to your seed and chemical companies, and then your rice mills. It's a very significant impact on our industry right now.
Of course, and those mills employ lots of people, usually in rural areas. Now we're talking it's a full economic hit for the region. And I guess my question would be, if we've lost half our acreage, Whitney, is that enough to bring these prices back up? Are we cutting supply enough to bring up prices, or is it not doing enough good yet?
That's a big question, and there's a lot of speculation. There's not really a direct answer about it. And what carryover is going to look like in the coming year, I've asked around, and really I can only get speculation. Hopefully we would have less carryover and those rice prices will go up, but who knows how far they will go up. It just depends on the world trade.
Will it be enough is always the question. And the reason we wanted to have Whitney on this week is because she has recently completed a 3-part series on the rice industry in Arkansas. Part 1 is out now. We look at how 2026 is a struggle for farmers. Whitney, what are your next 2 segments going to be digging into as the rice industry saga unfolds?
Sure. Yeah. The next segment, part 2, is on basically global rice trade. India and their government policies really do impact the rice price. They pretty well set the price because they are over-subsidized by their government. You look at an Indian farmer, someone from India, they're going to be subsidized by at least 86%.
Oh, wow.
Some speculations are 91%. So they don't have the risk that we have. They don't have the EPA or the FDA or anyone, regulating them. And that's a lot of the U.S. rice, or not a lot, but a good size of our cost of production,
Right.
in addition to our cost of production not being subsidized like they are. So they can set a rice price much lower than we can, and we can't compete in the U.S.
All
This is a
right.
game we can't win.
We can't. And folks, so that piece comes out on Tuesday at farmpress.com.
Yes.
And then on Friday, Whitney, you'll tell us what the U.S. is doing to counteract that effect. Folks, check these pieces out. They are a fantastic deep dive on an industry. Whitney Shannon, thank you so much for joining us this week.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Now, on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. You may have heard of a till soil tractor, but I'm betting that many of you have not. It was a Canadian tractor. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Ag Spray Equipment, a leader in liquid application equipment and parts, and the home of the DT Series trailer. From turnkey solutions to field-proven performance, they help maximize your spraying operation. Learn more at agspray.com. At the tractor building boom that followed World War I, there were several companies that came on the scene, and then just like that, they went away. Till Soil was one of those. Let's look at this Canadian-made tractor. An 1830, 18 horsepower on the drawbar, 30 on the belt pulley, powered by kerosene, intended to replace the big steam tractor engines. They probably made dozens of these, maybe a few hundred, but likely not thousands. The agriculture recession after the First World War made survival difficult for the tractor companies. This one was made in Canada. The tag on it says Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Regina, and Calgary. The Canadian Till Soil Farm Motors Limited. It's in captivity at the American Tractor Museum, Perryville, Missouri. Go see it. AmericanTractorMuseum.com. Here now is Mark Stock.
Well, Hello Max Big Iron is into June, and our auctions are outstanding. The Carl Hausner Farms LLC sale will be on June the 2nd. 200 plus items located in Sauk City, Wisconsin, featuring a 2020 John Deere 9900 four-wheel drive self-propelled forage harvester, several John Deere four-wheel drive tractors, Caterpillar wheel loaders, skid steers, John Deere mechanical front tractors, 2021 John Deere S780 four-wheel drive combine, John Deere 4730 self-propelled sprayer, Ram 2500 heavy-duty crew cab pickups. And then on Thursday, June the 4th, the Christopher Oldweiler retirement sale, items located by Oriana, Illinois. Christopher purchased the majority of the equipment brand new, like the 2016 Klaus Lexion 730 combine, the Case IH 500 quad track tractor, 2013 model with only 1,642 hours, the Case IH Magnum 260 mechanical front tractor. There's a 2024 year model MacDon FD 230 30-foot flex draper with a header cart that's only seen 250 acres since he purchased it new. 60 high quality, well cared for pieces selling on this June 4th auction. And Max, on the real estate front, there's 20 acres of Pettis County, Missouri land that will sell on Thursday, June the 4th. Land located just outside of Lamont, Missouri. Go to bigiron.com for more information.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Gehringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringoff.com. Gehringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. FFA offers competitions as a way for members to show off their strengths and to grow. Well, one of the important ones is Creed Speaking. Joining us this week is Hadley Brown. Hadley is a sophomore in Homedale, Idaho, member of the Homedale FFA chapter, and she's the winner of the Creed Speaking competition at the National FFA Convention. Hadley, congratulations and thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you guys for having me.
Tell us, why was it you wanted to compete in the Creed Speaking category?
I decided to participate in the Creed Speaking contest because I knew I had lots of family supporters, from my advisors to my actual family, that were going to help me in learning my voice for agriculture. And that's what the Creed's all about, is speaking our voice and showing agriculture who we truly are.
And of course, you present the Creed and then the judges ask you questions. And what are some of the questions they asked you?
There was a lot of different types of questions from different perspectives on leadership, current agricultural issues, and how we see them. And so I can't exactly recite what those questions were, but they ask you quite a big diverse area of questions in terms of leadership.
That makes sense, and I assume the goal is to get to know your experience and knowledge level with the industry of agriculture overall, isn't it?
Yes, and so that's why always in our questions, we're supposed to tie our personal experiences in them. And so with me raising my Hereford and Angus cattle and my family being a part of Country Natural Beef, that was one of the things that I always brought into my questions.
Well, Hadley, one more time, congratulations on winning the Creed Speaking Contest. Thanks for speaking to us on your last day of school, and we hope you have a wonderful summer and a great future in FFA.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Chad Colby's Tech segment is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. For a lot of folks in agriculture, growing up on a farm meant growing up running a cultivator between the rows on the family operation. Chemicals have sort of reduced that, but maybe that's a skill that's making a comeback. Chad Colby joins us with more.
Mechanical weed control is gaining a lot of attention with more row crop farmers. Recently, I found this photo of our family's cultivator from the late 80s. And back then, row crop cultivation was just simply a part of farming. It was common to see row crop cultivators running across the field. When you fast forward to today, there's a lot of technology inside of new row crop cultivators you can see right here. The concept may be familiar, but the technology has changed dramatically. That camera you saw right there is used to keep the toolbar on the row. Automatic side shifts, section control, hydraulic down pressure. Early in the season, it uses the cameras, but late in the year, it uses those set of feelers you see right there to keep that cultivator on the row. I know why Dad always let me cultivate when I was a young man, because I was pretty good at staying on the row, and my dad did not like running a row crop cultivator. You know, the goal is to improve weed control while trying to be as efficient as possible. But row crop cultivators are only part of the story. We're seeing a renewed interest in machines like this precision tine harrow. Unlike a cultivator that works in between the rows, this machine works across the entire field, helping disturb tiny weeds, break surface crust, manage residue, and improve the overall field finish. And while many people associate tools like this for strictly organic farming, more conventional row crop farmers are evaluating where the mechanical weed control can fit alongside modern crop protection programs. What I found interesting about this technology, it's not about going backwards. It's about applying some proven agronomics with today's precision technology to give growers more flexibility in the field. And as I spent some time with this machine this week, I was really impressed with it. The grower and I walked across the field, and man, there were no weeds anywhere. He was really commented about how much it worked right next to the plant, because in a row crop cultivator, of course, you got to stay away from the plant. He also commented just how easy it is to use with the technology we already have, road guidance and so forth. He was traveling somewhere between 3 and 5 miles an hour, depending on what he was trying to do. And remember, you can adjust that tension of those tines right from the cab. And as you can see, it really does an amazing job. Something else to look forward to as the farm show season comes very soon. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. I might be willing to try row cultivation with guidance on the tractor. The month of May isn't over yet, which means it is still Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are still talking with Carol Anderson. Our friends at VM Agritech have partnered with the experts at Rural Minds to help expose agriculture to some of the challenges we see from a mental health perspective. Carol joined us last week, talked about the struggles that some farmers face that can cause mental health issues. She joins us again. Carol, thanks for coming back on This Week in Agribusiness.
It's great to be back, Mike.
So we talked about the struggles last time. Now let's talk about why it can be a hindrance sometimes to get help. Farmers, we are self-sufficient. Does that slow us down when it comes time to ask for help?
Well, I think it's hard because to succeed as a farmer, you have to be independent. You have to be industrious. You have to be able to kind of figure things out on your own. And those are things, I think you're a farm kid and so am I. You're kind of conditioned to learn those things and learn those behaviors when you're on the farm, because you've got to figure it out one way or the other. And those are really honorable qualities for the most part until it comes to your health. And when it comes to your health, regardless of whether it's a heart issue, high blood pressure, cancer, whatever, you know that if you don't deal with it and if you ignore it, eventually you're going to probably meet your Waterloo in one way or the other. And, interestingly enough, and I don't think people know this, that mental illness is often predisposed to genetics, just like heart disease or cancer or anything else. And it's an illness. It's how we're wired. And so it should, people should feel comfortable seeking help because it's so important to just maintain your perspective and your balance so that you are able to deal with the challenges that you meet every day on the farm.
Well, Carol, I understand Rural Minds recently introduced the Farmer Mental Health Resilience Program, and since so much of this is, I feel a little uncertain about talking to my neighbor about mental health, will this program help me get over that or identify ways I can better start that conversation?
We really hope it will, Mike, because I think farmers are really hesitant to publicly talk about how they're feeling, and there's this overarching feeling that you should just suck it up and deal with it and go on with your day. But just with like other physical ailments, it won't go away because it is a health issue that needs to be addressed. And we know the data tells us that farmers are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. And that's one of the highest rates of any occupation in the country.
And that's why we can't wait. Get online, ruralminds.org/farmer resilience. Learn the signs of mental health and how you can better be a neighbor. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.